So let's try and plot the names, the levels on our chart, what we're talking about. The subject matter is to explain a very basic concept that Hashem is unchanged, notwithstanding having moved or having created. And the principle is that when you affect a movement in something else, you can't do that without moving yourself. That's the law, one of the laws of nature. Moreover, when you're engaged in a particular activity, you're invested in it, and you can't, or you're severely limited in terms of doing a simultaneous activity. As you said, when you're running, it's hard to lift a heavy weight. Then you stop running, then your strength returns, as it were. Now you can invest it in something else. So that's because when we do something, we effect a change. When we move, we're invested in it. And we change. We're constantly changing. Everything is changing in life. Nothing is the same 1 millisecond after the other. In general, other things are growing, or they're decaying, or they're breaking down, expanding, or they're breaking down. It's the two states of the universe, of reality. It's either yes or no, going outward or going inward, as it were. It's all rooted in the Ratzav Veshuv, as we explained in this Maimah here, which itself is rooted in the mitzvah saseh, mitzvah lo saseh. It's a binary system, yes or no. So there's just a famous quote you probably know. It's a very sobering one. It's from the Bechaye's edition, a classic commentary on the Torah. So he writes famously that a child, a h'tchk, a human being, as soon as we're born, we begin to wither. H'tchk, miyad k'shenoiled, maschil is yabish. Now that's quite interesting because that's notwithstanding growth. On the one level, there's growth, expansion clearly. But at the same time, there is a withering. He's invoking this idea of moisture getting less, a drying, literally, a drying. So things are a state of a constant flux. That's the nature of life. The stone that we look at is not the same a second later. There's a slow erosion. It's very slow, but it's affected. And yet Hashem is not infected by creation. And that's what this mind is to explain, which is a very big theme in Chassidus. Now, so to understand it, the point, it all rests upon appreciating what exactly is the divine output. What does it take for God to create? How much is he investing of himself? The short answer is not much. To put it mildly, it's a negligible expression of his being. Now, to give us an understanding of that, he invokes the following language and imagery. So we spoke about this, the king, Atmos HaMelech, that's the king. The analogy, that's Hashem. But even that's not the essence of Hashem, not Atmos. As you said in the Maimah, when we say Atmos HaMelech, we mean the actual body of the king's mind and heart. The king is a human being in the marshal. The parallel of Milo is Atzilus Deibish, or even higher perhaps, but Atzilus Deibish as he's manifested 10 spheres. That's the body of the king. Ata. Okay, we'll get to Ata in a minute. Okay. So there's the body of Atmos HaMelech, and then there's the name of the king. The king's name, that's the whole relationship the people have with the king. They don't engage him intellectually, emotionally. They know what he looks like, it's from a painting. They never get that close. So what's the whole relationship with the king? That the state, the country, and the people bear his name. His coat of arms, his name. That's shame. But then there is even a lesser degree of engagement. So for Hashem, There's Hoydai al Shemayim. Kiniskav Shmei Levada. Even his name is exalted unto him. And what is Hashem revealing? I use the word invest, but invest is not the right word because invest implies that we get involved. He's not involved that way. It's only a glimmer of his name. Only a glimmer of his name. So I suggested what's the parallel lamata, a glimmer of a name. When you don't even understand or know or have an appreciation of the name, you just hit the name, what it represents, and it's the history. There's this, a name itself has content and value. So it would appear that the ray of the name, the merest reflection or glimmer of the name, would mean it's all you know is the name. That's it. Nothing beyond that. It could be any other name. This is the name. That's it. It tells you nothing. You know nothing at all of Atzmas HaMelech, the king's mind and heart, by just knowing the name and not even history of the name. Which tells you something about the kingdom and the king, the monarchy and its history. You don't know that. Just the name. King George. That's all you know. So that's all a marshal. That's all a marshal. It's only the rays. Hayd as in ray. Hayd of his name. That's what's on Eretz V'Shamayim. That's what Hashem has invested, as it were, to create. The other marshal which the Torah uses, which Chassidus elaborates upon, is a word. God spoke and brought creation into being. Now, a word, a singular word or a whole string of words, don't tell you a thing about the person. I said chair, dog, cat. What do you know about me? Nothing. Moreover, without going to haladichas now, it's explained in Tanya at great length, how a singular word against all the words one can say is lost in numbers. Put up that singular word or even a phrase against all the thoughts one could produce that produce speech. It's lost in numbers times. You don't even have the numbers for this. Put that up against the raw emotion and intellect that produces words. It gets less negligible, and the single word, putting it up against the sources and where it comes, it fades to such a degree you can't see it almost in relative to what produces the word. That's another marshal to explain. That's why Torah uses the image, the marshal of God said and brought creation into being. Why would Torah use a metaphor? Why use a metaphor? Just say God created. Beginning, that's the opening pasuk talking, Bereshis bara, and then the Torah launches into Vayoyim. It's a metaphor. Who needs it? So one of the explanations is that Torah is conveying. You should know, what does it take for God to create this complex, incredible universe? It's a word, analogous to what a singular word is for the human being. Marginal times marginal times. There's no number to explain, how the ratio, the insignificance of a single word to the human soul, to the ability to produce words, and where that comes from traces deeper and deeper in the soul, finally to the koach of seichel. It becomes so insignificant as to be virtually undiscernible. That's another marshal. He's giving it here. It's a different marshal. Here we're talking about Atzmas HaMelech, the name, and the glimmer of the name. Okay, so that's what we're learning here. Let's remember that, because it now translates that in a bracha. So again, Atzmas HaMelech, his name, and the glimmer of a name. So this he translated and explained that this is what we're saying in every bracha. So Ata we don't speak of. Again, Ata is Atzmas Mamish, Not God is already manifested as a king with attributes. So that's aside. So we're talking Havaya. There's three things mentioned in every pasuk. And the word Baruch, of course, means what? Anybody? Baruch.
The mamshech, to draw down.
Right. To draw down. We're connecting to, and we are revealing. Drawing down, of course, is metaphoric. There's no up, there's no down, but we mean down in terms of revelation. So, Havaya, so please help me, friends. Havaya Elekeinu, and then finally, well, in the order of the pasuk, Melech HaOlam. Also, we pointed out, we can give an explanation. It doesn't actually follow the order of Asmas HaMelech Shmoi and Haidai, or the ray, or the glimmer of the name. So Havaya is what? In the parallel
of Atmos, of the Melech.
Atmos HaMelech, that's the body of the king. The king, the conscious manifested king, with Seichel and Midas. The parallel of Maila basically is, as we said earlier today, Atzilus. That's basically Atzilus in the general sense. Everything's relative in the general sense. Okay, so that's Havaya. What's Elikenu? Kenu skips to the third level.
There's even a horror of his name.
That's the reflection of his name that is actually the end creative divine energy and force is Elikenu. Now he said Elikenu, our God. What's the point? You remember there's the end of the Ois. And the end of the first paragraph of Moishe, you can glance at it.
Singly, he connects singly to the Yidden through mitzvahs.
Yeah, we reveal not just Elikenu, but all of the levels in creation. That's the point. That's Torah mitzvah. So we'll get back to Torah mitzvahs, in a moment. First, just creation as it is per se. So you said Havai is the Atzmos HaMelech. Elikenu is the glimmer of his name, and Melech HaOlam.
His name.
That's the name. He's the king, the sovereign of the universe. He's the Melech. That's the way Hashem creates. Then comes the whole point, the whole avodah, and therefore, now we appreciate that what's actually invested in creation, this infant, how do you say that word? Infinitesimal. Say it, somebody.
Infinitesimal?
Yeah, can you make that an adjective?
Infinitesimally small. Infinitesimally,
that sounds right. Infinitesimally small output of the divine is utterly concealed in creation. The whole avodah is that we reveal in creation, that creation itself, number one. Maimon doesn't spell this out, but it's implied here. Number one, creation know that you know what you are, the result of the most negligible expression of the divine. This is this grandeur, great creation. It's extraordinary, the universe, complex, profound, and awesome. Its mysteries we have yet to begin to unravel. All of that is just what? The merest glimmer of Hashem's presence. You need to reveal that truth. And that truth then leads to, so then who is he? So through Avodah we reveal who he is. To Atzmos Mamash, Ata. Because his desire is to be revealed here, B'tachtoin. So we reveal the insignificance of creation relative to him, and then we reveal he desired to be revealed his essence in this insignificant, concealing world. Nisada, that's his desire. Okay, that's the whole general idea. Now there was something in the middle, a pasuk in the middle. I want you to help me match up. He said, this is the page, you have different page numbers, but it's again, Ois Hey, the next page, 4 lines from the top of the page. I am first, says God, I am last. And aside from me, there is no divinity, there's no God. How did he touch the pasuk? Take a minute to look at it. He's saying it's the same thing we said now about Havaya Lekeinu Melech Haolam. So let's help. You see, types like this. So there is a level of Elikim. Mibalodai means a level in between Elikim, the level of Elikim, which is Elikeinu, which is the actual glimmer of the name, and the Anirishim, which is Havaya, the Atzmas HaMelech. And what is the level in between? What would that level in between be? Therefore, the name. That's the Melech Haolam. That's how he explains the pasuk. So let's look at it now. Ani Rishon v'ani Achron doesn't address Ani Achron. Doesn't address specifically Ani Achron in the pasuk. He just says Ani Rishon. That's Havaya. Elikim mentioned in the pasuk. That's Elikim. That's creative force. And Mibalodai, and nothing aside from, that's the level between, that's Be'emtza Isa, that's the level between Elikeinu and Havaya, which is Shem, the name. Okay, again, Atzmas HaMelech, there's a body of the king, the name of the king, and the glimmer of the name of the king. Name alone, again, devoid of all understanding for the recipient, just that's his name. Okay. And then he says that through mitzvahs, we mamshech and reveal godliness in the world, to reveal, number one, what it takes to create the world, and notwithstanding that, God's desire to be fully revealed here through our avodah. That's rapta v'inyan bazeh. Yeah, more or less clear, folks. Yeah, okay, good. Right. Binyan bazeh dihine ha-mitzvahs nikroyim evadim de malka. Quoted frequently in Chassidus, this is from the Zohar, that mitzvahs are called the limbs of the king. Right? Hence there are 248 mitzvahs, because there are 248 spiritual limbs, as it were, to the king, which we parallel in our bodies as well. So why they're called limbs of the king? When a yid does a mitzvah, we draw the king's body, his limbs, to us. For example, when a yid does tzedakah and chesed, by way of illustration, he arouses and reveals the supernal chesed of Hashem, which is described in the Zohar as droya yamina, the right arm of God. That's the giving, embracing arm. So he draws that level and reveals God's embrace, literally. Not so. Now he adds now. Not only do we draw the particular limb, subtlety coming, but not just the limb, but the inner energy of the limb, we'll soon explain. The parallel within the person is the life force, which is present equally in every part of the body. Every part of the body is equally alive. You can't say one thing is more alive than the other. In essence, it's all life. That's in essence, but pneumius. Externally, very different qualities of life. The life invested in the fingernail, in contrast to the life expressed in the brain. They are worlds apart. That's in terms of the manifestation, but the DNA is the same. In the fingernail, a swab of saliva, or a cell, a particle of the brain, no difference. So likewise, he's saying, so the chayas hanefesh, the life force, the essential life force, is from the perspective of the limbs, the various limbs and parts and organs of the body. There's a difference between the hand and the foot. But the nefesh, he means the pure life-giving energy that animates the body and makes us alive. In Hefesh B'neim Klal, there's no difference to which part of the body the nefesh is present there and vivifying it, giving it life. So all to say the same is true of mitzvahs. There's two levels of the divine that we connect to when we perform a mitzvah. There's, as he just said, an example of chesed. There is the example of tzedakah. When we do tzedakah, on the one hand, so we're drawing down the parallel of Maila. Which organ or limb would that be? The right arm, metaphorically speaking, of the king. That's number one. But within that itself is the transcendent, essential life force. It's the Atzma Samelech. Let's see inside the mind. Every mitzvah relates at the same time. It has an individual identity, individual midah, but at the same time, it reveals a transcendent expression that's present in every mitzvah, and that's quite simply that it's God's will. This is the parallel is Ratzon. God's will. Now, just like there's all kinds of wills, there's 613 or 248, 613 expressions of his divine will. And as we see in halacha, some of them are more serious and some are less serious in terms of the transgression. Just like the body parts, some are more vital to the body's existence to others. Remove an arm, you're still alive. Remove a heart or a brain, you don't. So externally, some mitzvahs are more severe than others. Likewise, sins. Some sins do more damage than other sins, hence the punishment is greater or lesser. But that's all in terms of the impact, the measurable impact. In terms of the king asked to do something and you didn't or did, it's the same. Bring me a glass of water or go wage a war at the end of the world for me, please. In terms of the rotzen, it's the same. That's the nefesh, it means. That's the chayas of the nefesh. The parallel is the rotzen, or the will to live. The will to live is a transcendent force that embraces the body everywhere equally. Every part of the body regenerates and rejuvenates with the same intensity, the same will, the desire to live. So the parallel is Lamaila. When we do a mitzvah, or Lamata, when we do a mitzvah, we draw on the individual mid of the Eibishter, but they're all drawing on his transcendent will. We're connected in a deeper way than just the particular specifics of that commandment, the act of chesed or the act of gevurah. So he goes, are we clear? Yeah. Shazel Gamma, 4 lines at the bottom of the Shazel Gamma should call mitzvah. Let's call a mitzvah. It's an halacha, one mitzvah. It's a fascinating thing. Every mitzvah incorporates all the other mitzvahs. Shalachein, how do we see that? Omro, therefore, Chazal said, ha'isik b'mitzvah potem and a mitzvah. If a person is involved in a mitzvah, he's exempt from doing another one. Why? What don't we consider which is more significant than No, if you're doing this mitzvah now, it has to be done now, you're potter because you're not losing out on the other mitzvah. At the end of the day, all mitzvahs connect us to the will of Hashem. Well, you're doing the will of God, whether it's a big moment or a small moment. I know, 2 lines now from the bottom of the final paragraph of Moishe. Through mitzvahs, not only do we draw the particular parallel divine limb above, but the pnimius. That's the king himself. This is the king. Parallel again is the Rotzen. One of the parallels. That's far beyond just the king's name, which is a very distant relationship. Here, you're being hugged by the king's arm. It's not just the king's arm, it's the king's present in the arm that you're grasping, clasping, or being embraced by. And likewise, every mitzvah. Yeah, this is all the Alter Rebbe's Maimer.
Till the end of this small paragraph.
What?
The Alter Rebbe's Mimer goes until the end of this small little paragraph.
Yeah, well, actually, it doesn't, as you'll see in the order. But let's continue. I'm just saying it's not clear to me whether Rebbe added anything to see inside the original Maimer. Well, Moishe ba Maimer Shaydei mitzvahs, certainly going at the end beyond this paragraph. The Alter Rebbe adds that through mitzvah shev b'chinas ha'pnimis devar de malka. So through the mitzvahs, which draws not just a particular parallel organ or limb, but the pnimius of the king, Nasa Inyan, says the Alter Rebbe these words: this affects achzoras ponim beponim. Achzoras ponim beponim means to turn around and face to face. Gam even, even if we're facing, or not facing rather, if we're standing back to back, as the Maimon will go on to explain, the Rebbe will explain. Even if we're facing the other direction, through mitzvahs, this affects a face-to-face connection. Loving that, understand this, to understand this as the Alter Rebbe, we have to explain what is meant by face-to-face and what's meant by back-to-back. And when he said this Maimer, Shabbos Chanukah, he said, this is all we have at this manuscript of the Alter Rebbe, written by the Mittler Rebbe with notations from Tzemach Tzedek. Now, footnote 29 says that after some time, the entire Maimer was found with slight changes in its completely, and was subsequently published. That certainly helped the editors put this all together. Okay, so what exactly happened and how is it that only has part of it, and then you got the whole Maimer? Don't know. Let's turn the page. Yeah, we'll go another few lines. Yeah, the Yuvan. I mean, the Maile Shabbat is that because at this point the Rebbe didn't have the Hamshach HaMaimer, so the Rebbe is explaining the whole thing himself, completely his own explanation, as it were. So that's the upshot. We got a Giluy of the Rebbe's Maimer purely, as opposed to the Rebbe explaining the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, which was doing, I would assume, till now. Okay, so what do we have to explain now? What does it mean face to face and standing face to face as opposed to standing back to back? So explained in Teres Chaim, der Maskle v'ata tetzave. V'ata tetzave. Teres Chaim is from the Mittler Rebbe. So So this is by way of illustration. Two people are standing in such a way. The back is facing the back. They're literally standing back to back. Even though their bodies are not far, on the contrary, it's possible could be the shoulder of one is attached to mamish, touching the shoulder of the other person. They're pressed shoulder to shoulder, back to back. The kid of God, physically, they're very close, just like they would be if they stood upon him, face to face. Nonetheless, there's no, they couldn't be further apart. One person turns his back, literally, on his friend, his colleague, to stand back to back. Why would this happen? Why would a person express such a gesture? That's because in his heart, he has a complete lack of love for him, etc. So what this in the Ruchen is, when you're Adam, and in the service of man, it means in Iksiv, the pasuk says in Yirmiyah, Hashem laments, you turned to me with your back and not your face. What's the pasuk talking about? This is the churban of the first Beis Hamikdash, the pashtus hakos of koi, alazman sheporko oil malchus shamayim lagamri. It's talking about that Yirmiyah lived during the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, Yirmiyah, and that was a time when you didn't cast off completely the yoke of heaven, of David Zora, and they worshipped idols, like the first Beis Hamikdash, that the Gemara expansion is Gala Avayna. Their sin was out in the open. Shayabam Avayna Vidazara, they worshipped idols. The Gemara says because their sin was out in the open, so the length of their exile was also out in the open. It would be 70 years, and they would return, which they did. The Gemara goes on to say that the second Beis Hamikdash, that they sinned furtively, in secret, and externally projecting a behavior of piety, their sin was concealed, therefore the end was also concealed. And still, it's 2,000 years later. Sure. Okay, so let's continue this Beis Hashem tomorrow. Yeah. Okay.